that, I thought a lot about, was it worth the time? Right? And I think this is where artists are crazy, because I was like, yeah, totally worth the time, right? It was like, I could just think the idea. I'm like, oh, I could just think that grass is really important, right? But to place it in a form that has to be considered in hopes that people can touch on what I'm thinking on just a little bit, it was absolutely worth it. If I don't know if that's normal. I don't know if that's like what I think it's kind of where artists are different from the rest of the world. It's like how we spend our time on things that people just would never spend their time on. Someone said once to me that you shouldn't do anything without joy.
I think the same things I like about being an artist, I like about being a teacher. It's connecting, it's conversing, it's the chemistry. Those are my favorite things.
I get a lot of joy from what I do, but it's not all things to like to do, right? It's challenging, but it's like a joy. It's a puzzle. It's like engaging.
Hi, my name is Helen Maureen Cooper. People who know me call me Maureen, but Helen Maureen is what I use professionally on stuff. I am an artist and I live in the city of Chicago. I teach and I make photographs mostly. I work with image production, a variety of technologies ranging from early 19th century processes to digital installations that have been generated into wallpapers.
My name is Jacqueline Tchaikovsky. I'm an artist in Chicago, and I work at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago as the Director of Civic Engagement. I live in Chicago. I think I'm lucky to be a woman artist in Chicago at this time. Women are very powerful in the arts in Chicago right now. They run the ROOST. I think a lot of women artists, we still run into the canon of art. I think we're not accepted into like large museums as frequently. But I think in Chicago, it is a dynamic scene that where women are ruling that right now. And women are getting into spaces, women are building spaces, women are giving out grants. A lot of the cultural workers who are doing the things I was really excited about here in Chicago are primarily run by women.
I think it's a really easy city to live in. I can drive places. It's an affordable place to be an artist, to have a lifestyle, to have a home, to be able to do a wide range of things, to keep a studio practice. So it's definitely a cheaper place to live. I think there are cheaper than New York or LA. There are definitely drawbacks. There are fewer collectors. But there are benefits. It's a cheaper place to live. So I've been able to make a lot of work. I've been able to invest a lot in my practice and in my projects because I'm not paying an arm and a leg for rent. A lot of people have studio mates. It's a cheaper way of maintaining the entire space that one has. So yeah, we split the space pretty much in half. We do work in here at the same time sometimes, and that's been pretty good.
And I do see, from when I started in Chicago 10 years ago till now, I see there is like this more where in Chicago is kind of like this punk rock, ironic, hipster scene, it's become a lot more collaborative and dynamic scene where more people have voice. And I do think it's because women are in control.
There's so many women who run arts organizations in Chicago that I have never really felt like being a woman kept me from having opportunities. And I have commercial representation. And my gallerist is a gay man. Oddly, in being an artist, I've made choices and I've made very specific work that I think has kept me out of those more male-dominated spaces. So I'm not like the arts organizers that I work with are gay men, so there's nothing to really be exchanged there, or they're other cis females who are married to men, and so again there's not the same kind of exchange that could happen if you're working with straight men. So I haven't felt those difficulties.
I think women are killing it right now in Chicago. They're doing good. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Lori mentioned that too. Like, yeah.
They're the boss. Women are the boss.
So right now I'm working on a project called Blue Angel, which is the subject matter are drag queens, drag kings, hyper queens, and other gender non-conforming, gender outlaw kind of people that do performance. So generally it's like an LGBTQ plus kind of crowd. I'm working with a process that was invented in 1851 called collodion. It's also known as wet plate photography. If it's on a piece of glass, it is called an ambrotype. If it's on a piece of tin, it's called a tintype. And after 4 years, I'm not an expert. I think I'm an advanced beginner. And so I wanted to take this process and really apply it to creating a body of work that really needed to be made in collodion. The work is about the LGBT community, using them contemporarily to talk about history. Because the pictures are made with this 19th century technology, the images themselves look like they were made in the 19th century. So I'm calling on contemporary performers, contemporary people to envision their past and really to become their queer ancestors. I'd worked with, about 12, 13 years ago, I was working with drag queens in Philadelphia. And it was there was a community, and there was a community, and there were people I was working with. I was just racking my brain to try to figure out what kind of project would really make sense with a 19th century technology, what really called on that. And the answer I came to was that the technology itself would have to be part of the story. So the mechanism I was using really needed to be interwoven into the meaning of what the work was. And it needed to be more than like just a strategy of capturing images. It needed to be part of telling a history, and that history needed to be intrinsically like interwoven into the work.
So it was 3 pieces that we put together. One was called Lay of the Land, which was an exterior outside piece. One was called From Here, which was the intense mirror installation. And then the other one was called Homeostasis. They're all pretty different, but linked in small ways.
You touched my heart.
The project from here was a 30-foot long, 6-foot high installation of mirrors cut to look like a chain link fence. And the idea was that the chain link fence becomes the wall, and the mirror is the part that you typically look through in the fence, the viewfinder. But when you can't look through it, you could only reflect upon yourself. So I wanted the viewer to be implicated within the object. And what I was hoping is that the object, again, is this object on the west side, which is a definer of class, of community development. It's a definition of gentrification and who gets to be on what side of the fence in those processes. The exterior piece was called Lay of the Land. And Lay of the Land it had 2 phases. So I went to Maine in summer and I ripped up a space in an empty lot and put in soil and planted a type of plant called sweetgrass. This plant is a type of grass that absorbs sulfates and pollution from the ground through its complex root system. And with that, it takes the pollution up into its body, and when it dies, it has removed and healed the land from pollution. I wanted to use it as a symbol of kind of, again, us implicated in healing space and healing the land. The idea of putting the mirrors onto the fence became like this container of like celebration of this healed space. So the fence, I wanted to change this architectural found object of something that's kind of ugly and build it into something like dazzling and beautiful. And then homeostasis was much simpler. Basically, I took grass and dirt from the west side of Chicago, from open spaces, from parks and empty lots. And I took garbage and I took the grasses and dirt and I turned it into rope. And then I took this natural dye and created a black dye and dyed all of the fabric. And then I incorporated it I wove in garbage. I turned the garbage into a rope and then I wove it in with this grass and material from the land of Chicago's west side. And I like the idea that what is typical, how we think of the earth, that I change it into the urban earth, that the urban earth is thriving and that it has soul and like these things from the ground, from us in interacting with the earth, we have consequence and they're generative, or they can be generative. So that project was very complicated. It didn't have the directness of the interior work.
Fog. Fog is a really common problem in in collodion.
Because there was a lot of stuff. So.
I know, right?
Even like the labor part, like that, like falling out, and then how we arranged them, and then you had to like the tape thing, and the glue thing.
I know, right? Yeah.
And you can get fog from any number of issues. And it turned out more recently that I was having several problems. So one is that the bellows in my camera were leaking light. So that was one issue. Another is that the quality of the silver I've been using was subpar. There was something wrong with it. So I was having some chemical fogging. And when you have a light fog, you can't wipe it off of the plate. But when you have a chemical fog, you really can. So we learned about that, and then we were testing and checking the level and the authenticity of the chemistry and the elements that were being used. And so that's just a minor set of issues, really. Reflections from the light.
I think what was hard was working with the curator and the director and not having set commitments from them. So I think in the future, I'll definitely create contracts and expectations that I expect people to follow, and sit down with them and make sure they can commit to the things I need. I think when we were working, I had assumed, and I told Scott that I'd be working kind of long hours up to the day of installation. And they changed that without a lot of notice, without the ability for me to plan or adjust, which caused a lot of stress. And it caused stress not just to me, but it caused stress to everybody. Remember, we had to have everybody in the exhibition come and help.
Yeah.
And I felt frustrated and embarrassed that is how we had to problem solve. I felt like if we stuck to the plan and my agenda, could have been you and I and maybe one other person kind of plunking away, seriously, hardworking, and not have to bring the stress onto everybody. So that was, and for me, I took that personally. That was not a situation I felt comfortable being in as an artist. I didn't want to have to influence other people in my own problems. And later, when she had come to apologize, she really kind of didn't apologize. She kind of said that is what she thought I needed to do. And I felt frustrated, like as the artist, I'm the expert in what I do, and I can decide if I needed support or if I needed something, I would have asked for it.
I would say there are going to be tough times where you feel like frustration in the work you're making, or you feel frustration in the reception you're getting, and it all passes.
I think I was scared to jump in and do the work. I think I was scared to be in front. I feel like I didn't have confidence that my art mattered. And I think I would have, if I was like an art mom to myself back then, I would have like lit a fire under my butt. I think I worked a lot after school in jobs and nonprofits, and I think I would have, if I could go back, I would push myself to exhibit more, even though my work might have not been great or exactly where I wanted it to be.
It's, I would say, like, be resilient and understand that if you keep pushing, change happens.
Getting my work out in the world, getting feedback, building community around my work, I waited way too long to do that. I think I did it because I didn't think I had a lot to say, and I think that was wrong. I think I always had something to say, and I should have been working through it, be willing to be embarrassed and to make some bad work or make mistakes or change my work in front with others in discussion. I think I did a lot of stuff in private. I don't think that was the right way to do it. Right. And I think I thought a lot about that. I thought a lot about, was it worth the time? Right. And I think this is where artists are crazy, because I was like, yeah, it's totally worth the time, right? It was like, I could just think the idea. I'm like, oh, I could just think that grass is really important, right? But to place it in a form that has to be considered in hopes that people can touch on what I'm thinking on just a little bit, it was absolutely worth it. And I don't know if that's normal. I don't know if that's like what I think it's kind of where artists are different from the rest of the world. It's like how we spend our time on things that people just would never They're done.